So I am so happy to be here. My name is Kellyanne Mahoney. I'm a youth program specialist at Autodesk, and we're going to be discussing tonight Autodesk Student Design Challenge that we hope you will take advantage of the opportunity to design and imagine something and potentially win some scholarship awards as a result of your imaginative, well thought out ideas. So the contest is called Make It Modular, and I'm so excited to be here with the ACE Mentor program tonight. So my name is Kellyanne Mahoney. I'm a youth program specialist at Autodesk. I was actually a teacher in the Boston Public Schools for 13 years prior to joining Autodesk. I'm also on the board of the ACE Mentor program in New Hampshire. So really excited to be here tonight to speak to students throughout the country, and so feel so grateful to be welcomed by Katie. And Katie, did you want to say hi?
Yes, good afternoon, evening, students. Thanks for joining us. I'm Katie Bawarski, and I am the Director of Student and Alumni Advancement for ACE National. So I get to work on a lot of fun programming for you all as your students, and then as you graduate from the ACE program and become alumni. So of course, I have to give a quick plug for those students, especially seniors that might be graduating, to make sure you stay in touch with us and register as alumni in the database, and make sure that we have your updated email address and contact info so we can get in touch with you about exciting opportunities like this and some other ones as you move forward in your career path. But we're so excited for you to join us tonight. And thank you so much, Kellyanne, for partnering with us in this.
Well, thank you so much, Katie, and I'm really grateful for your warm welcome. So how to participate? You all are doing fantastic so far. So do please, I can't see the chat right now, but Katie is going to be monitoring the chat. And do please, like if I'm going too fast or you have a burning question that you would like for me to answer on the spot, just let Katie know, and Katie knows that please interrupt me. Interruptions are welcome as well. And then I did set aside some time at the end, and I can hang out at the end as well to answer any questions that you have. Our goals for this evening are to explore the principles of biophilic design and our connection with nature and how it can guide our design process. We're also going to think about design for deconstruction strategies, to imagine structures that can be easily reconfigured, reimagined, and repurposed over time. And a lot of you guys already gave some great examples of places in your community that you think are, might be ripe for reimagination. So we're excited to hear your ideas. Please keep them coming. We're going to focus tonight on using Tinkercad to create a 3D digital prototype that can help tell the story of your Make It Modular contest entry. So again, we're going to be featuring a contest that's offered by Autodesk tonight that is an opportunity for you to challenge yourself, to apply some of the skills that you've learned through the ACE program this year or throughout the past several years if you've been involved for a while, and then maybe repurpose it for the purpose of this contest. We also want to share with you some other opportunities that you might take advantage of to level up your future. So I, again, work for Autodesk. Autodesk is a software company. We make software for innovators like you who are thinking about how they can redesign and reimagine the world and improve the built environment. And particularly, there are different areas or several different areas at Autodesk that our customers imagine and create. So we have media and entertainment, we have design for manufacturing and assembly, but a huge part of our company is focused on architecture, engineering, and construction. The product that I primarily support at Autodesk is called Tinkercad, which is a free, easy to use web app that equips the next generation of designers and engineers with the foundational skills for innovation. So 3D design, electronics, and coding. So Tinkercad works really well on Chromebooks, works on almost any device that's a computer or even a tablet, like an iPad actually is a great tool to use in combination with Tinkercad. And one of the fun features of using Tinkercad on an iPad is there's an augmented reality feature. So you can take what you designed and you can unleash it into the real world using augmented reality. So I'll share a little bit about that tonight with you. But if you've never seen Tinkercad before, it's really easy to use. Basically, all you're doing is dragging and dropping shapes onto the work plane. You're combining those shapes to make more unique and more personalized shapes. You can, export it as an STL and 3D print it. But there are all other types of ways that you can tell your story digitally as well through using Tinkercad. So we're going to get into that this evening. This is just an example. So I had mentioned before, I am on the board of the ACE Mentor program in New Hampshire, and some of our students right now are thinking about how they can take some of their 2D designs and make them 3D. And one of our mentors, actually Tyler Wilson, has volunteered, and this is his photo, has volunteered to actually 3D print some of the students' designs for their final presentations. So that's another advantage of using Tinkercad, particularly if you've never used a CAD program before. It's a really quick and easy way for you to kind of take some of your plans, like maybe you have, a floor plan or, an elevation that you've drafted, but to think about how you can make it 3D. So Tinkercad is really simple. You can, really quickly make really simple things, like you could make something small, like design a toy car. But one of the cool things about Tinkercad is you can also, there's a send to feature within Tinkercad, which allows you to send your design directly to a more professional tool, which is Fusion 360, which would allow you to take your kind of creative idea and then bring it into a more professional program to do things like add chamfers and fillets and cross section and even apply physical materials and render. You also can design something big in Tinkercad, so you can think about think architecturally and designing a dream room or a dream house. And then you can access some of the free tools that we offer through our education licenses to access something like Formit, which is a conceptual architectural tool that would allow you to then take your design and think about how maybe you could apply, computational design. So thinking about how you can use algorithms to improve your design and to iterate on your design. You could also use like solar analysis tools within Formit and all other types of really fun features. In Tinkercad, you can also design computationally in Tinkercad. You can design something, like a bridge, like infrastructure. And then you could take your design into a more professional tool like InfraWorks, which is a civil engineering software. And you can think about placing your bridge in a real location and running simulations on it, like traffic simulations, for example. One of the things that I love the most about Tinkercad is I feel like it's a really quick and easy vehicle to see yourself in STEM and kind of express yourself creatively using an engineering mindset or a design mindset. So within Tinkercad, you can also level up. So you could, again, take advantage of using the augmented reality feature. You could take a picture of yourself with your design and interact with your design. And if you're interested in, computer animation, another one of the tools that we offer for free through our education license is Maya, which is a computer animation software that's used, in the video game industry and also, a lot of the computer graphics and films that I'm sure you enjoy. But if you are just getting started in Tinkercad, I wanted to make clear to you that it is okay. So if you begin in Tinkercad and you end in Tinkercad in this contest, that was actually the case for several of our winners last year. So we ran this contest, a similar contest last year. And we worked in collaboration last year as well with James Devlin, who is from the Philadelphia area, but he actually played on the New England Patriots. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He studied mechanical engineering at Brown prior to joining the NFL. And since he's retired, he's been working with us kind of to share his entrepreneurial journey with us, invite students kind of along the way with him, and also to help us host some of these fun contests. So last year, he challenged students to help him. He was thinking about, and he still is actually thinking about designing and building a gym. And last year, he challenged students to kind of design with him through that process. So these are some examples of what students designed last year, and much of this was done in Tinkercad. So here's just a little film to give you a sense of what James is up to now.
My name's James Devlin, 3-time Super Bowl champion, currently cutting my teeth in the entrepreneurial world. This shipping container used to be sitting on a port somewhere. It's been recycled, repurposed into my new business venture. It's closed down for the winter now, but it gives me a chance to regroup with all the people and put this thing together so I can learn about how to make more.
Students, let's build a better world together. Check out autodesk.com/make-it-real for inspiration, learning, and scholarship opportunities. My name's...
So this is the contest page. So this is the Make It Modular contest that we're referring to. And here is just if it's hosted on Instructables, which is part of the Autodesk family. I'll show you actually what an Instructable looks like. But so this is just kind of some of the specifications of what we're looking for your design in this Make It Modular contest. It's inspired by James's vision and his entrepreneurial venture that he's working on right now, which is he's designed and built this smoothie and coffee cafe, but he housed it within the constraints of a shipping container. And that's what we're asking you to do, is to think about how you could design something that is kind of modular in nature. We even provide a starter file, which is what you can see here, where you can copy and tinker and you can get started in Tinkercad. So that's one of the things I'm going to demonstrate for you tonight. But some of the themes that I heard a lot of you talk about already in terms of spaces in your community that you would like to redesign. Public spaces, affordable housing is another theme that you can build upon. If you're thinking about like school redesign or maybe outdoor classrooms, there's all different kind of themes that you can build upon. And we're actually hoping in the way that we design the contest that you might be able to take the ACE project that you have been working on and just kind of adapt it and apply it to this kind of new challenge. So there's more specifications in the contest itself, but we are offering its two $10,000 top prizes. It's 4 $5,000 prizes, 10 $1,000 prizes, and then we have a bunch of runner-up prizes as well. And the deadline for the contest is June, I believe it's June 20th. I tried to make it like right around the end of your school year. So if you're wondering what an Instructable is, here's an example from one of our students last year who actually entered the contest because we did a series of 3 design challenges last year. So this was the student's final submission that he won. And you can see just like he's not just using Tinkercad, he's making a physical scale model of his design. He is thinking about the site where he's placing his design. He's combining images from Tinkercad, with other images and diagrams to really kind of tell the story of his idea for the gym. And you can also see that, it also incorporates text as well. And it's really Instructables is a vehicle for you to be able to document your project. So this is what an Instructable looks like. I don't want you to be intimidated by how long this Instructable is. Yours might not be as long, but again, this was one of the students who was one of the winners last year. So you can see all the thought that he put into it.
We just had a question come in about the starter model. Daniel's wondering if it's possible to import the Tinkercad starter model into Revit.
It is possible to bring it into Revit, and I'm actually going to show you a little example of that tonight. Something that you might want to do too when you're thinking about what's the best use of Tinkercad. Tinkercad is a great, it's like kind of like a sandbox for you to kind of play around and quickly prototype your concept. Once you get into Revit, you might want to use Revit for something like details, like if you want to show like the roof meeting the wall. So I have some visual examples of what I'm talking about, but you can also combine the different programs too. So you can, use Tinkercad for one purpose, maybe it's for your ideation, and then you might go into Revit to do some detailed drawings, for example. Even if you want to show some of like the mechanical or the electrical or the plumbing elements, that might also be a good place to start. You can also do that in Tinkercad to do like really detailed kind of drawings of different sections as well, and open up multiple files. So any other questions, Katie?
Yeah, we did have one come in about the scholarship money. Can that be used for pre-college programs?
It actually can be used. So for the scholarship, it can be used for tuition. It's scholarship award. So it can be used for tuition. It can be used for room and board. It can be used for books. It can be used for childcare. It can be used for transportation. So it's kind of up to you in terms of how you're using the money to further your education. We just want to help you along the way wherever you're going, be it architecture, engineering, construction, or the building trades as well. Other questions, Katie?
That's it for now. Oh, it doesn't matter when we spend the money. That one just came in.
It's up to you. We want to make it as flexible as possible. So it's up to you in terms of when you are spending the money, because this contest, it's a really good point. Actually, this contest is open to high school. So you may not be able to spend the money. And, if you are a freshman or if you're a sophomore, you may not be able to spend the money until you go to college. So if you're under 18 and you win the contest, your parents or guardian will need to sign a winner's declaration form in which they kind of sign off on that the money is going directly to the student as well. So I hope that answers your question.
We've got a couple more coming in. Do you want to do them now, Kellyanne, or wait till the end?
I know I'm happy to answer them now.
Okay. Do we have to use Autodesk software for the project, or can we use another software?
You need to use Autodesk tools in some way, but it's up to you which ones you want to use. So you could use, Tinkercad, you could use Fusion, maybe to make like renderings of your design. You could use Revit, Format, AutoCAD, whatever it is, but you do need to incorporate Autodesk software in some way in your design.
Great. And another question, what's the site to visit to see all the contest details?
So it is, actually, do I have it in the next? I'm going to show you in the next slide, but this is actually what the website looks like. So I think that's a good segue.
Yes.
So this is autodesk.com/makeitreal. The website was just launched today, or this web page was just launched today. And tomorrow, actually, so I'm going to show you in a second another opportunity to apply for funding, which will open up tonight. But this is the webpage, so it's autodesk.com/makeitreal. And this is what it looks like. So it has the whole kind of James story. We've made some web episodes that kind of tell the story of his new business venture and the way that he is thinking about designing in a modular way. There's the link that would take you to the contest page on Instructables. And then these are some tutorials that we actually made together with James last year, featuring different people that I work with across Autodesk to kind of provide little demonstrations of how you might use more professional tools with your design, if that's where you are in your journey and you want to level up and use something like Format or AutoCAD. There's a little video on how you can illustrate details in Revit, and also a place where you can there's also a video about how you can kind of use both InfraWorks and Format to draw up a construction logistics plan. What I'm showing you here is these are all the tools that are professional and free to you as part of the education software donation. So you just need to verify and get an education account, and it should be free not only to you, but also your teachers as well. So this Building Changemakers application is something that you were among the first to know about. And this is geared towards students who are ages 17 to 22. And it's for students who are going directly into the building trades. So if you're going to carpentry, if you're going to be a boilermaker, if you're going to be, a glazer, an iron worker, this is an opportunity for you to fill out a simple application. Should probably take you less than 20 minutes. And you just need to verify that you are about to graduate from high school or you just graduated from high school, and let us know just what 2-year vocational school you're going to pursue the building trades, or if you're joining a union, for example, and you will, this is a giveaway, so you will be getting $500 to help you in your journey. And again, you can use that for boots, safety equipment, whatever it is that you need, transportation. Maybe it's like a down payment on a car. It's up to you. And that will be on this webpage. and it will be that form will be open at 3 a.m. Eastern time. So it's open for, so it's up to $50,000 that we're giving away. So if you're interested in that Building Changemakers program, you should try to apply as soon as you can. But this is the URL, so autodesk.com/makeitreal. So you can find information about the contest, which is what we're going to be focused on tonight. But you can also, that's where you'll find the application for the microgrants program too. So any questions? Any more questions, Katie?
Yeah, we've had a couple more come in. Erin wants to know, would I be able to create a small motorized windshield wiper for a face shield on a helmet in Autodesk?
That sounds like a really cool project for Fusion 360. And Fusion 360 is kind of more for when you're designing something smaller. And it's actually a really great program in terms of if you want to go from Tinkercad and then send your design to Fusion. And there is like a PCB environment within Fusion where you can think about like electronics and all types of, like if you want to like do like CAM and animate your design, that's a great, or make like 2D drawings. It's a great place to visit. So Fusion 360 I think is the program that would be most helpful for that. Awesome.
Owen wants to know, can we submit to multiple contests in the Instructables website at a time?
Yes, you can. So in Instructables is a place where it's also a fun place, not just for contests, but also for inspiration. So finding fun projects. So if you're like, oh, that sounded like a fun project to make a helmet with a windshield wiper on it, if you Google Instructables, you might be able to find some projects that have been done in the past that might be similar that you could, think about how you could build upon it and change it. But that is a pretty unique idea.
Yeah. Let's see, Danielle asks, it was unclear on the site, but do we need a physical model and an online model? I think he means for the contest.
So there are two prizes, two top prizes. One, we wanted to really feature a student who has really great CAD skills, so to make a digital prototype. And we also wanted to highlight a student who made a really great physical prototype. So I would say yes, at some point you should make a digital design, but it could just be, using Tinkercad. And then maybe from there, after you've kind of, helped us imagine what it looks like, at scale, then maybe you're just focusing on a building component that you want to highlight that is, maybe it's like really cool joinery that, helps the design be modular. So it could be a combination. You don't necessarily have to build the physical prototype, but you should have some sort of a digital prototype.
Okay. Let's see, a couple more questions coming in. How do we apply for a student license? I tried making an account with my LTU student email for ACE, but it didn't register as a student account.
You might just need to verify your account. And there is, you can share my email with the students later, right, Katie?
Yes, yeah.
Because there's a template that we can share with you too that can make the verification process easier. But if you're a student and you go to an accredited, like a public school, for example, you should be able to get a free license. So
great, thanks. And I'll put your email in the chat later on if anybody is having trouble with that. Let's see, one last question for now. One of the judging criteria was 3D digital literacy. What does that exactly mean?
So there's a little infographic underneath that explains in detail what we mean by that. So it's, a little bit is a computational design, a little bit is kind of like innovation and, creative thinking, and then, kind of more just like technical CAD skills, but it's all kind of outlined there on that infographic right underneath.
Perfect. And that's it for now, Kellyanne.
Awesome. Thank you. So just, as you're kind of processing all of this, so you've asked like really great logistical questions, but I know that we're speeding through things a little bit. So I just wanted to slow down for a moment to just hear from you, like, what are some big ideas or themes that might come to mind in relation to this program? So share your thoughts in the chat. So just like thinking big picture, what are some big ideas or themes that you think seem super important to being successful, particularly in the Make It Modular contest? Any responses so far, Katie?
Yeah, adaptability of designs.
Yeah, adaptability, flexibility.
Benefit to society, sustainability, affordability. Finding a way to make your design work with the community and benefit the people living there.
You're speaking my language. This is fantastic. Yes, these things are all really important to communicate both visually in your design, but you can also, as you can see in the Instructables format, that you can also kind of write a caption and write about it a little bit about, maybe it's not obvious in your design, but you can make it obvious in your words as well.
Got a few more coming in. Transportability, effective use of space, accessibility to all. I love that. A former accessibility specialist.
Yes.
Benefits the community, construction techniques and materials. That's a good one. Creating something you're passionate about. Love it.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're understanding the purpose of this. So I'm going to move on to the next section. But do please, if you're a little bit confused even still, please ask questions to each other too, because it seems like the majority of you are really getting this. So one of the things that you might apply, so someone said environmental sustainability, which is super important to this contest, and actually circular design and principles, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit in the next segment, is really important to this program and to this contest. So one of the ways that you might go about thinking about circular design concepts and also environmental sustainability is to think about like how can I look to nature in order to kind of think about how I might solve some problems in my community through my design. So this all relates to biomimicry and biophilic design principles. So here are some words that you might think about. I used to be an English teacher, sorry. So I always like to include vocabulary. So biophilia, biomorphic, biomimicry. What is something that you're noticing that's in common with all three of these words? You can let us know in the chat. What's something that you notice that's in common amongst all three of these words?
They got it. Bio, prefix of bio equals life.
Nice, thank you. So I don't have to say that. So these vocabulary words all have to do with the idea of looking to nature to think about how you might design something better. So biophilia has to do with it's kind of like it's like an assumption that it's like human nature to feel kind of comfort and peace in being with nature. So that's what biophilia means. And when you're employing biophilic design principles, it's like you're kind of trying to take advantage of that. Biomorphic just means that when you hear morph, you think like shape, for example, and it's just it's like a more organic sort of shape that's inspired by nature. And biomimicry is the idea of really like explicitly looking to nature and analyzing nature in order to almost like copy it to address a solution in the built. You could do it in the built environment, for example, which is what we're going to talk about. So this is like one of my favorite buildings. Actually, Montreal is one of my favorite cities. And this building is called Habitat 67. It was designed, I think, for the World's Fair back in 1967 by the very famous architect, Moshe Safdie. Sorry, I'm from Boston, so I'm not the best pronouncer of words. But one of the questions I have for you about this design, and sometimes, biomimicry is supposed to be intentional. But in looking at this building, what are some elements of nature that, you think about when you see this building, Habitat 67?
Cell walls, chaos, rocks.
Nice. Yeah. So cell walls. Okay. I never heard cell walls before, but that totally makes sense. And when I look at, I think of like cliffs, and like sometimes when you look at cliffs and the little nooks that are particularly in like sea cliffs, and then sometimes you see little birds like hanging out in those little nooks. Yeah. That's what I think about when I see this building. I'm actually not 100% certain that was where the architect was going with it. And again, biomimicry is supposed to be intentional, but that's kind of the idea, is like building something that mimics nature in some way, and even some of like the positive qualities of nature. And this has been going on for a long time, that architects are kind of, or designers build in sort of nature into their designs. For example, this is from, an ancient structure, and you can see here that what do you think is going on in this this architectural detail? What do we see? Is there some element of nature?
Head in a crocodile's mouth and dragging, eating a man's head.
Yes, so it is. So I wanted to show this example because it's definitely biomorphic, that it is showing. So this is like a serpent sort of, detail, but I wouldn't say it's biophilic. So there is some differences between these words. This, rather than, with biophilic design, you're trying to kind of conjure that kind of love and, warmth and comfort that we find in nature. But you could also have a biomorphic design that's meant to this is actually an apotropaic device, which is meant to kind of scare people away from the building. So just wanted to show that there are some differences in those words. This is another example. So this is a building that I designed in Tinkercad, but it was based on a design that I found from an architecture firm that created this building called Abalone House. So I want to show you an example of how I use Tinkercad in order to sort of replicate it. And also to show that, because that's one of the things with Tinkercad is that primarily you're working with prismatic shapes, but you can actually use a tool in Tinkercad called the Scribble Tool in order to make more biomorphic shapes. So the Abalone House's roof is an example of biomimicry because it imitates the geometry of a mollusk shell. So one important thing to know about biomimetic design or biomimicry is you're not just copying the beauty of nature, you're also thinking about the engineering of nature. So it's a beautiful design, but it's also really similar to a mollusk shell. The shape makes it really strong, but really light at the same time, similar to a mollusk shell. So when we think about biomimicry, we're not just thinking about shapes and design, we might also think about materials, which would be fun to think about and write about when you're doing this contest. So for example, bioluminescence is a really interesting concept, which is, bacteria even, or mushrooms, or even some sea vegetation is able to actually generate a light on its own through chemical processes. And this is an example of in car design. I know that's not house or building design, but in car design, that there are some car designers that have actually employed some of these concepts as well. This is actually an old example from 2010. There's a design contest in Los Angeles to design the car of the future. So this was Mercedes' example, which is called the Biome, and it's actually a car that was grown from a seed and it's powered by plant juice. But one of the interesting constraints for the contest was to design a car that's less than 1,000 pounds. And one of the actually heavier elements to a car is the headlights. So they said that they were going to use bioluminescence in order to power the headlights. So again, just biomimicry is thinking about like, how can we look to a spider web in order to maybe think about how we can make textiles that are stronger and lighter? Or how could we look at the fin of a whale and apply that kind of shape and its aerodynamic qualities to designing better turbines? Or how could we look at the foot of a gecko and see that it is like sticks without like really being that sticky? And then how could we apply what we learned in order to make better adhesives, for example? And then when we think about biophilic design elements, which is something you might want to write about in describing your design, research has shown that these design elements reduce stress, they increase cognitive performance, they improve healing, they positively affect emotion and mood. And when you are even moving into the workplace in the future, I'm sure you'll see some of these, like I think even in like office design, there's a lot of this biophilic elements to it to kind of reduce people's stress that we have been enduring over the past few years. So environmental features could just be like literally, organic, vegetation, in your design. Natural shapes and forms is like, mimicking the shape of a mushroom in order to make, an interesting element, a decorative element to your building, or even like thinking about scale and like making like this building kind of evoke sort of like being in a forest, for example, just by the scale of it. Or restorative patterns and processes. So, thinking about how you can include water elements or other kind of repetitive elements like wind, for example. Light and space, so thinking about lighting. Place-space relationships, so really thinking about how your design, this is very important to circular design as well, is thinking about how your design reflects the specific location or environment where it is. And then also spaces for refuge. So thinking about back to even that, the example of Habitat 67 is, humans tend to like to be connected to a larger space, but also have like a little place to hide as well. So I'm going to show you, do a demonstration in Tinkercad. Before I do that, are there any questions, Katie?
Nope, no questions. Just a lot of people chiming in, loving the project, some different ideas from what you were sharing before. So I think we're doing great.
Yay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to show you really slowly first, and then I'm going to speed up some of the demonstrations just for the sake of time. But how I made that abalone house in Tinkercad was I started out with a biomorphic shape using the Scribble tool. And I want to show you the Scribble tool because Scribble is my favorite shape in Tinkercad. So I'm going to show you really slowly first. So this is what Tinkercad looks like this is what my dashboard looked like at least a few years ago when I made this. You're going to click create a new design, and then you're in this work plane. So this is your workspace, and you're just dragging and dropping shapes. And this particular shape is the Scribble shape. And when you drop the Scribble shape onto your work plane, it actually automatically sends you into this 2D environment where you can actually like sketch and draw in 2D. And then when you are done, and you click that you're done, it brings you back into the 3D editor. Your shape is actually partly extruded already. And you can just quickly, so what I just did there was I hit Command D, or you could do Control D. I'm on a Mac, so I use commands, but Control works as well. And then when you duplicate in Tinkercad, it doesn't just remember the shape that you made. You can also make subtle adjustments to the shape. So make it slightly smaller, change the angle of rotation slightly. And then all I was doing was hitting Control D or Command D over and over again. And that's called Smart Duplicate. And you can see that you can make these really kind of interesting shapes. Like you can imagine how you could use that for like a spiral staircase, for example, as well, really quickly. So Smart Duplicate is super fun. So what you see me doing next, so I'm using the rotate tool. So when you click on a shape, you can rotate along 3 axes. And you can actually type in the angle, typically 90 degrees or 180 degrees are your friends in Tinkercad, or you can actually manually do it by using that dial. And I'm going to use rotate again. So what I'm trying to do next is I dragged out a hole, which is, so any shape that you make in Tinkercad, you can turn into a hole by clicking on that shape panel. And where you see that red dot, you can change it from a solid shape into a hole. And then there's the box, and the cylinder actually automatically has holes in Tinkercad. And what I'm trying to do is just kind of shave off that. I want the bottom to be flat. So I just want to take that, the bottom that's hanging below the work plane, and get rid of it. So I'm just using this box shape to subtract it. So you can see really quickly how you can make something cool in Tinkercad that looks complex, but only took like a minute or so. So I'm going to show you this actually one more time as well. And I'm also going to go through some other steps along the way. So the next step would be I would add 2 or more basic shapes to just start to kind of like make these little like rooms that look like pods kind of in the design itself. And for those, I used the half sphere. I also used a box shape to kind of put like a foundation or like a platform underneath my design. The next step would be to add a shape that would provide support. I love the paraboloid, so that was the shape that I chose, and I just rotated it so that it was flipped, and then I started adding them to my design. You can also, it's important architecturally to be able to add a window that is transparent. So that's something else that you'll see when I do this next demonstration. And then, in terms of scale, it's always good to add a person or some sort of object, maybe it's like a car, for example, to help the viewer kind of understand the scale of your design. And you can actually import an SVG if you wanted to do that in Tinkercad, so a scaled vector graphic file into Tinkercad. So I'm going to show you how you can do that too. There are also little figures that are cute in Tinkercad, and I'm going to show you that in a second too. So this is just really quickly again. So I'm grabbing my Scribble tool. I'm doing that smart duplicate again. When you see me drawing a box around the shapes, you can also select the shapes. I'm grouping them together. And that's also how you subtract from a shape, is you take your solid shape and your whole shape, and you click that group icon at the top to group it together. In order to change the basic shapes, what you see me doing here is you just drag, you're just kind of like pushing and pulling those white handles in order to change the dimensions of the shape. If you want to actually keep the proportion of the shape and just scale it to make it bigger, you hold down the Shift key while you're pulling and pushing one of those white handles. Here you see me dragging that paraboloid shape. You can actually shift from perspective view to orthogonal view in Tinkercad as well. And you'll sometimes see me doing that so that I can move from 3D to more of like a 2D view. You'll also sometimes see in the lower right hand, right before you see the basic shapes, you see that edit grid. You can change the measurement from millimeters, it's preset to millimeters, to inches. So here I'm just drawing that window. I'm trying to make the window. Again, I'm using kind of some of these tools. So there's another tool that you can use. It's a little bit kind of like vector drawing, where you can color a little bit more efficiently. To lift a shape up off the work plane, so up the Z axis, you see that black cone at the top. So that's what I'm using to lift the shape up. And then if I wanted to stretch it out, I would use the white handles. That was me importing an SVG file into Tinkercad. It comes in huge, and I usually just scale it down to from 100 to 10 to make it accept it. I have a slow version of this that I can send a link to you guys to, that has all of these demonstrations and also a little bit of written kind of instructions about what I'm doing here. And you can also, if you make a unique shape that you like, or you import an SVG file into Tinkercad and you want to kind of keep it to use later, you can also put it into your My Shapes or My Parts collection, and you can have kind of like a library of shapes there. So that's like a very quick run through of just sort of all the things that you can do with Tinkercad. I have some more slow demonstrations to show you as well. But so again, this is just a checklist for you to think about biophilic design elements, which are really important to, or a great strategy to use for circular design. Any questions before we move on to this question?
Yeah, we've had some great questions come in on the contest and some of the requirements that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Do we have to use the storage containers as our building?
You need to use a volumetric module. In some way, it doesn't have to be the shipping container. Maybe it's like a bus, with the seats pulled out of it. It just should be the dimensions, or roughly the dimensions that are listed in the contest specifications. The shipping container is there for you to use as an option, but you can also make it bigger than, you just need to have the volumetric module there, but then you can add to it. So you could have 2 or 3 or 4 shipping containers. It's part of it is just for us also as judges to understand the scale of your design, and also to think about how you can employ modular design concepts too. Other questions?
Yeah, and I think that answered this one. Does the final product does the container need to have its original shape plus the extra design, or is it just a shipping container? So it sounds like it's really up to the student.
It's up to the student, and my next demonstration actually shows you how you can manipulate it in a way that changes it, I think, in the ways that you're talking about too.
Are they limited to just one storage unit? We've got a couple more questions here.
Nope. So they can add to it, and I have some examples of shipping container architecture that maybe might be inspirational.
Okay. And along with those lines, Derek wants to know if it needs to be a traditional building.
It could be, like, one of the options is outdoor classroom. There's an option of an entrepreneurial pop-up. There's an option of a public space that takes into account that we're living in the COVID era. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a building. And actually, my example that I'm going to show you next is more of a pavilion that's constructed out of shipping containers.
Great.
But it should be a feature of the built environment in some way.
Is there any limit to the size of the final design? For example, could I place a rooftop type space above the shipping container?
Yes, you can add to, build upon. You just need to have at least one volumetric module of the size specifications in your design, and you can build from there.
And a couple of other kind of general questions I think we can tackle at the end. The last one on the contest for right now, and I think you might have touched on this. Do we have to use Tinkercad, or can we use other software?
You need to use Autodesk tools in some way in your design. It doesn't have to be Tinkercad. It could be AutoCAD, it could be Revit, it could be Format. It's up to you.
Great, thanks, Kellyanne.
Awesome. So this is a question I had for you. I think we'll just push it out to the chat for you to think about. So the question is, how might nature influence your decisions around design and construction methods or materials? So share your thoughts in the chat, because I want to move on to this designing for deconstruction section, because I think that it addresses some of the questions that I'm hearing. So why are we asking you to think about circular design concepts, and particularly designing for deconstruction? So the idea that you're designing something that maybe it's not necessarily permanent. You're kind of designing it in a way that it's probably not going to be permanent. So how could you design it so that the materials, rather than going to a junkyard, are actually something that could be repurposed again for for a new purpose? And why we're thinking about that is, in thinking about the future of making and all the industries that we support at Autodesk, but particularly construction. One particular statistic that is something that makes us think about, how we can support our customers in better ways, and how can we make a better world through design, is that 30% of global waste is from construction. So all of these kind of statistics and facts and figures, even thinking about mega trends like population growth and the urbanization of the population, and even just kind of good things like the middle class is growing, like 400,000 people join the global middle class every day. That's wonderful. But in many ways, it also causes us to have to rethink the way that we design and make things, so that everybody has access to housing and to cars and to mobile devices and all the things that we enjoy using. So the way that we are making things is changing. So in one way of making things that are better for the environment is to think about how you could design things in a more modular way. So this is an example from Arup, which is a kind of a global design firm. This is kind of similar to when we showed the Mercedes-Benz Biome example. It's more kind of like a futuristic concept of what a skyscraper could look like in the future. And one of the things that I love about this design, aside from just how imaginative it is the way that it is designed in a modular way. In the past, for example, I really love looking at old architecture, particularly in the city of Boston, and we have these like really huge, grand buildings that don't exist anymore. And new buildings have sprung up in their place. When we think about in the future how we might design things in a different way, if we do it in a modular way, rather than having to take down the whole building if an element of the building fails, you could maybe swap it out for a different piece. So you can see that in this example. So again, modularity is the degree to which a system's components may be separated or recombined, often with the benefit of flexibility and variety in use, which is also flexibility was a word that one of you had stated in terms of a big idea that's important to this contest. And that's definitely true. And when we think about modularity, you could even think to nature, like for example, the beehive pattern that honeybees create is another, it's another example of modular design. When we think about the building industry in specific, we might think about the way that we design buildings is almost kind of like a kit of parts. So like when you think of like a Lego set, or even like if you've ever put together like IKEA furniture, it's the idea of how can you make almost like a bill of materials for each room of your design, so that even when we think about issues like supply chain and where are you sourcing some of your building materials, it's a way to kind of reduce waste and also kind of save money for the building company as well. Another way that we might think about designing for deconstruction is to think about how can you work within constraints. For example, like James Devlin in his business, which is the Soulberry, which is housed in this, at least his first example is housed in a shipping container. He's thinking about how can he make the most of a small space. So he's working within 150 square feet. For your design, you don't necessarily have to stick to those constraints, but just think about how, when you're trying to minimize the use of materials or to reduce waste in your construction project, you might think about making it smaller as one way of doing that, but it's not the only way. So again, this whole contest is kind of based on James's story and his entrepreneurial vision. This is an example people asked about Revit. What can you do with Revit? So this is an example of how you can use Revit to kind of also tell the story of your design by creating an exploded view, and also even do like a walkthrough of your design to help someone understand, how it feels to be a person in this space. So within the contest itself, if you click on that link, it will take you directly to Tinkercad, and you can click a button that says copy and tinker, and it gives you actually 2 shipping containers. One is kind of stuck together, it's all one part, but then the second one actually you can pull apart, which I'm showing you here. So shipping container architecture is also just fun to look at. So this is from DZine, which is a magazine. I think it's from Denmark or something, but I love looking at it for images. So you can see all the cool stuff that you can do with shipping containers. This is actually a really awesome example of design for deconstruction. So this is at a Qatar, which is hosting the next World Cup, which I think is in November. I should know this, but the stadium that they constructed, they actually just finished constructing it, is all made of shipping containers. And when the World Cup is over, they're able to then disassemble it and reuse them in other ways. So just lots of fun stuff to think about. So these are just some examples of unique ways. This is a Starbucks in Taiwan, and you can see how they've used cantilevering as well to make kind of this interesting shape. This is just thinking about reflecting, really literally reflecting the environment in which your design is built. I think this is an example of affordable housing made out of shipping containers. And then just someone's dream house built out of a shipping container, which is super cool. This was an example that I wanted to focus on, and I know we don't have tons of time, but I just wanted to walk through just some demonstrations. I do appreciate how engaged you guys have all been in all the questions, so I'm glad to stick around for a little bit if Katie's good with that to answer questions. So this was actually a basketball pavilion that I found really inspiring that was built in Taiwan. And it was meant to, shelter, provide shelter from the sun for basketball players, a place to rest, a place for spectators to go up top and view. So I made a little demonstration in Tinkercad for how you might do it with the starter file. So here I'm just clicking copy and tinker. And when you open it up, the 2 shipping containers are there. And I'm zooming out. There's little notes on it, and that's how you delete the notes, which is an annoying thing to figure out. So I wanted to show you how to do that. So I deleted that one that's all kind of stuck together because I want to work with this one that's split up into parts. So I just duplicated it. I lifted it up the Z-axis. I am using that view cube at the top to kind of navigate around my design so I can look at it at different angles, which is really important in 3D design. I am zooming in, particularly if you want a 3D print, it's super important that your parts are connected. So sometimes you need to kind of hit that plus sign, or if you're using a mouse, which is what you should be using if you are 3D designing, I was using my trackpad here. You can actually use that scroll wheel in the middle to zoom in and zoom out. In order to move shapes, I use the arrow keys on my keypad. You can also just kind of drag them as well, but I think it's more precise to use the arrow keys. So all I'm doing here is just selecting the different sides of the shipping container and then rotating them and then using the arrow keys to move them. Zooming in to make sure they're connected. Rotating it. So again, you can also type in 90 degrees. And then zooming out using the minus, but I could also use the wheel. I clicked on it and then just hit delete, clicking and just hitting delete. Clicking on that shape and hit delete. And then from there, it's kind of starting to look like that pavilion, and you can see how I'm just using, so you don't have to use the whole shipping container either. You just need to kind of maintain that, those dimensions. And then I'm just dragging a box shape. I'm using the white handles at the top to stretch it out. I'm just pulling it. I might use the shift key if I wanted to maintain the proportions, like hold down the shift key while I'm doing it. And then I'm zooming out and I'm duplicating it. So I just did Control D. I'm using my arrow keys to move it. I'm changing, so I moved, I think it's 0.5 millimeters that you're preset to in Tinkercad, and I just changed it to 5 millimeters to move it more quickly. And then I might, switch back to 0.5 again, or I switched it to 1 millimeter just to kind of change the precision. I'm zooming out, I'm duplicating it. So you get the gist of what you can do with the shipping container design. This is then how I added just some landscape. I just want to show you that there are shapes collections, similar to like you've used Revit, that you can kind of pull furniture into your design. There's some of that in Tinkercad as well. So I just selected my whole design just by drawing a box around it, and then hit that shift key while I was scaling it down. And then I'm just adding some shapes to add some landscape. But you'll see after I do that, I go into, if you go into the right-hand side where it says basic shapes, you can click down on a menu that will give you other options. So in addition to basic shapes, there's a structures and scenery collection where you can add, trees and other like landscape elements. I thought that kind of looked like a plant, even though it's a crystal, and I just turned it green and made it a plant. So that's something you can do. Another thing I wanted to show you, oops, because we're running out of time, is, oh, did I? Is how I added those cables. Oh, so if you click, this is just important for symmetry reasons. So if you click on one of those cables, you hit the mirror icon at the top and you can flip it around. So that was just something I wanted to show you because it's hard. But there's the tools at the top, in addition to group and ungroup and align, which is a really fun tool. Mirror is another one. So oftentimes when you're designing in a modular way, it tends to be symmetrical. So the mirror tool might be good to know for that. Lastly, I just wanted to show you the code blocks environment within Tinkercad. So there's a 3D editor. there's actually a circuits editor, which would be maybe fun for you with your windshield wiper design. But there's also this code blocks environment, which if you've ever used Scratch before, it's actually the same blocks that one would use in Scratch, but they do different things. So you can also design computationally using Tinkercad. And it's a way of actually creating parametric driven design. And it's a way of also thinking about like why you would want to use, like a out of the box script from Dynamo that's in Format. Why would you want to use computational design? Well, one reason that you might want to use computational design is maybe you're designing something that's repetitive, like steps that, are also kind of sometimes hard to, to make it fit in your design. So as you can see here, I have this set of stairs, but the way that I've written this script, it has variables at the top. So I can actually just really quickly, and this is another example of like flexible kind of design, I can change the step rise to 3. And I can change some of the other variables at the top, and then I can run my code again. And then I can also, so to change it really quickly, I can change the number of landings, for example, really quickly. And then when I'm done, I can actually export it as a shape and then bring it back into my pavilion design. So, other things like mullions on windows, for example, things that are repetitive. So then I can just bring the stairs back, go back to my 3D editor, go back into my shipping container design. And then I can go into, so when you go to basic shapes at the top, sorry. Sometimes when you get lost in your design too, you can hit home. So I'm zooming out and then I'm going into my creations, and then you can see my steps are there. And I can add them. And then ultimately it looks like this, and it still needs some work. Those stairs are kind of floating there. It doesn't look super safe. So I have all types of other stuff that I can share with you, but we are running out of time. This is actually, I did want to show you quickly the Revit example. So we took that Tinkercad design that one of the students made, and one of my colleagues actually brought it into Revit. You might not want to try to import your whole design into Revit. You might want to use Revit for something like what you see my colleague doing here, which is, creating a section of the design to kind of highlight some of the building elements and details. And he actually, there's an example of how he, so he's just kind of sectioning it here. And then in the next step, like with Revit, you could create like a 2D, like a drawing of your design. So here's just, I'm going to share the slideshow with you later, but here's some placemaking questions you can ask. You can use tools like Bing Maps to give us a sense of the place where you'd put your design. This is actually the community in New Hampshire that our students are looking at. And I'm just using Bing Maps. You could do an overview, like a bird's eye view using Bing Maps, or Google Maps you could use too. This is an example of in Boston and Roxbury. I just want an empty space, and I made a design in Tinkercad that I was able to place using actually PowerPoint, place it into the design. And I'll share a link to you for how you can do that. You can export as an GLTF file and place it into your PowerPoint. And then this is just if you're using the augmented reality feature. Using the iPad in Tinkercad, you can actually just take your iPad to the place where you hope to put your design and put it there using augmented reality. So I know Katie probably needs to go to bed soon too. Maybe you guys do, but I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions that you have.
Yeah, thanks, Kellyanne. We have had a few more questions come in. You have a couple more minutes?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to stick around. I feel bad keeping you guys though.
We've had a few students had to log off and go to their A sessions, but we do have a couple more questions. This one I thought was great. Should we work with the thought that our building would be able to be transported, or can we think of it more as a permanent building, like a home, for example?
It could be permanent. It's just that so one of the kind of really important principles of circular design is like it could be permanent, but you also want to think about like maybe you could use less adhesives, or maybe you can think about joining the, not using so many screws when you're joining the different components of your building, to think about if it needed to be deconstructed, how easily could it be deconstructed to be reused for another purpose. So it could be something that's transportable, or it could be something that you do intend for it to be permanent, but you have a backup plan in case it's not.
Sounds like there's a lot of flexibility here.
Yes.
A couple more questions and clarification on the shipping container. Does the whole building have to be shipping containers, or do they just need to include one for scale?
They need to include one for scale, but I also just want to challenge you to think about in choosing the materials for your building, really thinking about environmental sustainability. So maybe it's not a shipping container, but what else are you doing when you're adding to the shipping container to make sure that the building materials that you're using are kind of like green building materials, for example.
And along with those lines, they could use more than one shipping container for their design?
Yep, they can.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was some of the examples I shared. I'm going to try to figure out a way. This is an epic PowerPoint, Katie, but I'm going to try to see if I can upload it and then share the link with you, so you can share with students too.
Yeah, that would be great. That was another question that came in. Where will we be posting the recording? And I put the link in the chat. We'll post the recording as well as the PowerPoint to acementortools.org. And you all know that we have the student resources section on there. So you'll be able to find that in that section, probably by the end of the week, I would imagine. A couple of people asked, how they could get in touch with you if they had some additional questions, because they did have to jump off. So I shared your email in the chat.
Awesome.
And somebody else was looking for the link again. That's autodesk.com/makeitreal. And that is in the chat as well. Let's see.
And for the purpose of the recording, if you want to reach out, it is me, but to us, it's yes. You can also email makeitreal@autodesk.com, and I answer that email as well. Awesome. For the contest.
Perfect.
So makeitreal@autodesk.com. But Katie, feel free in the chat to share my email.
makeitreal@autodesk.com. Okay, here's another question. To be clear, for the project submission, the requirements are that the model should include an approximately 20-foot long by 8-foot wide by 9.5 high volumetric module, such as a shipping container. Mm-hmm. Could design some other sort of modular structure made of sustainable materials, such as vehicle parts, scrap lumber, etc.
Yep. We're trying to be flexible with this, but also keeping to the theme.
Yes, no, thinking outside the box. I love it.
It's good to think outside the box.
Yes.
Literally.
Let's see. I'm just scrolling back through. I think we covered all of the main questions. We talked about the recording, where we can contact you. Any other project questions, feel free to put them in there. Somebody did have kind of an off-topic question about, is it possible to upload an assembly file from Inventor as a family component in Revit? Or where could they find a tutorial on some of that information? I think you have a lot of tutorials on the website, right, Kellyanne?
We do, and let me think about who I can ask for that. Because I'm sure that we have that, because that's really important when you think about modular design, is going from building scale data to component scale data and vice versa. I feel like in our last episode with James Fope, my colleague, talks about that a little bit, but I can research that for you in terms of Inventor to Revit, because that's an interesting question.
Great. Okay, I think we addressed them all. Thank you so much, Kellyanne. I'll tell you, I wish I was a student right now. I'd be the first one to submit this project, and we've got a bunch of thank yous in the chat right now. So thank you from all of the students and ACE. We're so grateful for your time this evening.
Well, I can't wait to see what the students make. And I'm just the question. I didn't think that this would run so long, because there's usually not so much engagement when we do webinars. So I am not surprised, but it was exciting to hear all the interesting questions and ideas that ACE students were willing to share. And just, I just want to say thank you again for welcoming me, Katie. And you just can't wait to see what the students make.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And we'll look forward to seeing those submissions.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Have a great night, everybody.
Good
Bye-bye.
evening, I guess. Take care.
Bye-bye.